The canal siren rolled across the neighborhood like thunder trapped inside metal pipes. Everybody heard it. Even the people still recording with their phones lowered them slightly. The sound bounced off garage doors and wet pavement. Officer Reeves tightened his grip on my arm anyway. The cuffs clicked harder around my wrist. Rainwater slid down the back of my neck beneath my jacket collar. Cold. Sharp. Constant. My utility radio crackled again from the ground near the curb. Emergency pressure alert. Manual override required immediately. Reeves looked toward the canal lights through the trees. Red strobes flashed faster now. He swallowed once. Tiny movement. Easy to miss. But I saw it. Keller saw it too. The HOA president stepped forward under his umbrella. "Officer, she is delaying on purpose," he said quickly. "She threatened the board last month." I turned toward him. "I warned you the South Gate motors were failing." Keller ignored me. His loafers splashed through shallow puddles as he moved closer to Reeves. "She has been hostile since we denied her permit requests." That made no sense and he knew it. The permit requests were for flood reinforcement barriers along the lower canal wall. I filed them after the last storm. The board delayed approval for 6 weeks because they wanted lower maintenance costs before tourist season. Reeves nodded slowly, feeding himself certainty again. "So you have a grudge?" "I have 3,000 residents downhill," I said. "And 11 minutes before those gates fail." The crowd shifted uneasily. Someone stopped recording. Another person whispered, "Wait, floodgates." The rain grew heavier. Water rushed along the curb beside my shoes. "Fast now." The second officer checked his watch. "Sir," he said quietly, "dispatch is asking about the emergency alert." Reeves did not answer him. His jaw flexed instead. Pride again. That same stubborn pressure behind his eyes. He did not want the scene changing in front of everyone. He wanted control back. Keller stepped in before silence could grow. "She is exaggerating," he said. "The system is automated." I almost laughed at that. Almost. "Automated systems still need authorization," I said. "After lightning strikes, the locks stay sealed unless someone manually clears them." Reeves stared at me for 2 long seconds. Rain dripped from the brim of his cap. "And only you can do that? Tonight?" "Yes." A flash of lightning cut across the sky. White light washed over the patrol cars. For half a second, everybody looked pale and frozen. Then the thunder came. Deep enough to vibrate through the hood of my car. The canal siren changed pitch. Lower now. More urgent. My stomach tightened harder. That sound meant overflow pressure. A county emergency SUV turned into the neighborhood entrance too fast. Tires sprayed water across the median. The driver jumped out before the engine fully stopped. Orange rain jacket. County seal on the chest. He scanned the scene once, confused immediately. "Where is Naomi Carter?" he shouted. Nobody answered right away. Reeves still held my arm. The county worker looked at the cuffs. Then at the flashing canal lights beyond the houses. "Are you serious right now?" he snapped. Keller stepped forward again. "This is a police matter." "No," the county worker fired back. "This is a flood control matter." Another siren sounded in the distance. Different this time. Emergency management. Getting closer. Reeves finally released a slow breath through his nose. I could see calculations starting behind his eyes now. Not guilt yet. Just pressure. He crouched beside the plastic evidence bag resting on his hood. Rainwater rolled across the clear surface. The white powder inside had started clumping strangely. Too fast. Reeves frowned slightly. His glove pressed against the bag. Then he looked at my car again. The back passenger door was still open. Water dripped from the seat onto the pavement. That was when his expression changed for the first time. Small. Barely visible. But real. He noticed the bag was dry when he pulled it out. Completely dry. Even though the floor beneath the seat was soaked from the storm. His eyes lifted slowly toward Keller. And Keller suddenly stopped talking. The emergency lights kept getting closer. The emergency management truck stopped crooked across the entrance lane. Its headlights washed over the wet trees. And security gates. The county worker pushed past the crowd without waiting for permission. Rain soaked his orange jacket dark around the shoulders. "Take those cuffs off her now," he said. Reeves straightened slowly. "This is an active investigation. And that canal is an active threat." The man pointed toward the flashing red tower lights. Pressure levels jumped 6 feet in 9 minutes. The crowd quieted immediately after that number. 6 feet sounded real. Dangerous. Bigger than gossip. Bigger than the plastic bag sitting on the hood. Keller stepped backward under his umbrella. Tiny movement again. But enough. The county worker noticed him. "You are Martin Keller?" Keller nodded cautiously. "You ignored the reinforcement request twice." Keller's face tightened. "That has nothing to do with this." "It has everything to do with this." Another siren echoed through the rain. Closer now. The canal warning lights turned solid red. No blinking anymore. Steady. Harsh. Final. My utility radio hissed on the pavement beside the curb. Gate pressure critical. Manual override expires in 7 minutes. Reeves looked down at the radio. Water streamed from the brim of his cap onto his cheeks. He no longer looked confident. Just cornered. One of the neighbors stepped away from the crowd and lowered her phone completely. "Officer," she said carefully, "maybe let her do her job first." Reeves ignored her. But the word stayed in the air anyway. More people started looking toward the canal instead of me. That shift mattered. Fear was moving. Redirecting. A child somewhere farther down the block started crying. His mother pulled him closer beneath her umbrella. The county worker moved toward Reeves until they stood almost shoulder to shoulder. "If those gates fail," he said quietly, "water hits the lower subdivision first. Then the elementary school access road." Reeves blinked once. "School. Night maintenance crew is still there." Silence followed that. Heavy silence. The kind that presses against your chest. Keller spoke too quickly. "The system has backups." "Not after the transformer strike," I said. "You delayed replacing the backup relays." Keller snapped toward me. "Because your department doubled the estimate. Because your board wanted decorative fountains before storm repairs." Several neighbors exchanged looks immediately. One older man frowned toward Keller. "Is that true?" Keller did not answer him. Reeves looked between us carefully now. Watching. Measuring. His certainty kept cracking apart in little pieces. The county worker crouched beside my utility jacket lying in the rain. He picked up the badge Reeves had ignored earlier. Water dripped from the county seal across the plastic card. Then he held it toward Reeves. "Level 4 Flood Control Authority," he read. "She can override every canal gate from here to West Harbor." The second officer shifted uneasily beside the patrol car. "Sir," Reeves finally looked at me directly again. Really looked this time. Not at my skin. Not at the cuffs. At me. Rain slid down my forehead into my eyes. I did not look away. "You should have checked the visor," I said softly. His jaw tightened. Somewhere behind us, another engine roared closer. Bigger vehicle this time. County flood response. Blue strobes flashed through the trees. The neighbors stepped farther back from the curb. Their phones lowered one by one. The scene no longer felt entertaining. It felt unstable. Dangerous. Reeves reached toward the cuffs slowly. Then Keller stepped in again. "Officer, do not let her manipulate this situation." Reeves paused. "Wrong move." The county worker turned sharply toward Keller. "Manipulate," he barked. 3 retention walls are already over capacity." Keller's face lost color. "Just for a second. But enough for everybody to see." My radio crackled again. Louder this time. Desperate. "Naomi, if you can hear this, open the gates now." Reeves stared at the soaked evidence bag still resting on the hood beside him. Then at Keller. Then at the flood lights beyond the canal. Something inside him finally shifted. But the water had already started moving. The first surge hit the lower canal wall with a sound like a truck slamming into metal. Everybody heard it. Even over the rain. The ground beneath my shoes trembled lightly. Not enough to knock anything over. Just enough to make people stop breathing for a second. The county flood response truck burst through the gates with blue lights flashing across the soaked houses. 2 workers jumped out carrying tablets and emergency radios. One of them looked straight at me. "Naomi, we lost remote access." Reeves reacted immediately. He uncuffed one wrist. Then hesitated before unlocking the second. Tiny pause. Tiny war inside himself. Finally the second cuff released too. Blood rushed back into my hands with a sharp sting. I rubbed my wrists once and reached for my utility jacket lying in the rain. Reeves bent down faster and picked it up before I could. Water dripped from the sleeves as he handed it to me carefully this time. "How long?" he asked. "Maybe 5 minutes before overflow starts." Keller stepped toward us again. His umbrella shook slightly now. "This is becoming dramatic for no reason," he said. "The barriers have handled worse storms." One of the flood workers turned sharply. "No, they have not." He opened his tablet and spun it toward the crowd. Red warning zones flashed across a neighborhood map. Streets. Houses. Drain channels. South retention basin is already maxed out. The neighbors crowded closer immediately. Fear changed people fast. A woman wearing tennis clothes covered her mouth when she saw her street glowing red on the screen. Another man whispered, "My parents live there." Keller tried to interrupt again but nobody listened this time. The county worker beside me pointed toward the canal road. "We need her at the control station now." Reeves looked at the evidence bag once more. Rainwater rolled over the plastic in silver streaks. "What about this?" he asked quietly. I met his eyes. "You already know something is wrong with it." His face tightened. He did know. The dry bag. The soaked floorboards. The way Keller kept pushing too hard. Pieces were finally lining up inside his head. But before he could answer, another loud crack echoed across the canal. This one worse. Deeper. A transformer blew somewhere downhill. The lights in 3 houses flickered instantly. Then darkness swallowed half the block. The crowd gasped together. Emergency strobes painted the wet street blue and red. Shadows jumped across garage doors and palm trees. The air smelled like burned wires now. Sharp and bitter beneath the rain. My radio screamed with static. Gate motor failure confirmed. Manual wheel override only. The flood worker swore under his breath. That means physical release. Reeves frowned. Physical. I was already moving toward my car. The emergency wheel is inside the south lock chamber. How far? About a mile down the service road. Keller stepped directly into my path. You cannot leave while under investigation. Nobody spoke after that. Not even the rain seemed loud enough to cover what he had just said. Reeves stared at him in disbelief. Real disbelief now. Are you serious? Keller's face flushed red under the emergency lights. If she disappears, evidence disappears. People are about to lose their homes, Reeves snapped. The words came out harder than he expected. The crowd shifted again. This time away from Keller. The balance had changed completely now. One of the neighbors pointed toward the canal road behind the houses. Water was spilling over the curb already. Thin streams at first. Fast-moving. Dirty. The flood worker looked at me. Can you still stop it? I nodded once. If we get there now. Reeves grabbed his radio. Clear traffic on South Service Road immediately. His voice sounded different now. Less certain. More human. Keller took a step backward. His umbrella lowered slightly as he watched Reeves choose a side right in front of everybody. Then the second transformer exploded in the distance. Rain hammered the windshield as we sped down the South Service Road. Reeves drove the patrol SUV too fast over the flooded gravel. Water sprayed against the doors in heavy waves. The emergency lights painted the trees blue every few seconds. I sat in the passenger seat with my soaked utility jacket clinging cold against my arms. My radio hissed non-stop between calls from flood control teams. Pressure still climbing. Lower basin overflow confirmed. West Harbor retaining wall unstable. Every voice sounded tighter now. Faster. Behind us, the county flood truck fought through the rain with headlights bouncing hard across the road. Reeves gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles looked pale beneath the dashboard glow. He had not spoken in almost 2 minutes. Not since Keller backed away at the neighborhood gate. Finally he glanced toward me. Why did Keller fight so hard to stop you? Water splashed across the windshield before the wipers cleared it again. I stared ahead at the flooded road. Because if the canal fails, investigators will look at the maintenance budget. Reeves frowned slightly. And Keller moved money out of infrastructure repairs for luxury upgrades. The SUV hit a pothole hard enough to shake the radio equipment. Reeves steadied the wheel quickly. You are saying this flood could expose him. I am saying people warned him for months. Lightning flashed across the canal ahead. For a second the entire flood channel appeared beside us. Huge. Violent. Water slammed against the concrete walls in swirling black waves. Reeves saw it too. His face changed again. Smaller now. Quieter. Fear looked different on him than arrogance did. More honest somehow. My phone buzzed inside my jacket pocket. County Director Harris. I answered immediately. Naomi. Static crackled over the line. Then Harris spoke fast. We lost pressure sensors near South Lock 3. If the manual will jams, we evacuate everything east of Bay Ridge. Reeves looked over sharply. How many homes? Harris heard him through the speaker. Almost 4,000. Silence filled the SUV after that. Even the sirens behind us felt distant for a moment. Reeves swallowed once. 4,000, he repeated quietly. The road dipped lower beside the canal. Water covered the pavement now. The SUV tires cut through several inches of muddy runoff. Reeves slowed carefully. The smell outside changed. Wet concrete. Oil. River mud. Strong enough to seep through the vents. My radio crackled again. Naomi, we have another problem. I grabbed the handset immediately. What happened? A pause answered first. Never a good sign. Then, security cameras at the South Lock station went offline 20 minutes ago. Reeves glanced toward me again. Offline how? Cut manually, the dispatcher replied. Reeves cursed softly. Under his breath. Tiny sound. But real. Pieces kept connecting. Keller delaying repairs. The planted drugs. The disabled cameras. None of this was random anymore. Headlights appeared ahead through the rain. A black SUV sat sideways across the narrow service bridge leading toward the lock station. Engine running. No lights. Reeves slowed immediately. Do you know that vehicle? I leaned forward slightly. Rain streaked across the glass in crooked silver lines. No, the county flood truck stopped behind us. Two workers stepped out carefully into ankle-deep water. One pointed toward the bridge. Roadblock. Reeves opened his door. Rain exploded into the SUV instantly. Cold air rushed across my face. Stay here, he said. We do not have time for this. He stepped into the water and moved toward the black SUV cautiously. Flashlight beam shaking across the rain. I watched the driver's side window lower halfway. A man inside spoke to Reeves, but the storm swallowed the words. Reeves stiffened slightly. Then the man handed him something through the window. A document maybe. Reeves looked back toward me immediately after reading it. His expression darkened fast. He walked back through the floodwater slower this time. Different. Controlled. The rain rolled off the brim of his cap onto his jaw. When he reached my door, he did not open it right away. He stood there breathing hard for 1 second. Then he finally looked at me. Keller just filed an emergency injunction against you. Rain pounded against the roof of the SUV while Reeves held the folded document in his hand. Water dripped from his sleeve onto the paper. His flashlight beam shook slightly across the printed seal at the bottom. Emergency injunction, he repeated. Temporary suspension of Canal Authority access pending criminal investigation. I stared at the paper for 1 second. Then at the black SUV blocking the bridge. Signed by who? Reeves hesitated. That told me before he even answered. Judge Harold Whitmore. My jaw tightened. Whitmore played golf with Keller every Thursday morning at Bay Ridge Country Club. Everybody in county operations knew that. The county flood worker stepped closer through the water. This is insane, he snapped. The lock station cannot wait for court politics. Reeves handed him the paper silently. The worker scanned it fast beneath the flashlight glow. It was filed 23 minutes ago, he muttered. Before the canal even hit emergency levels. Reeves looked back toward the black SUV. They planned this. The driver inside the vehicle remained motionless behind dark tinted glass. Engine idling. Watching us. My radio crackled again. Louder this time. Naomi, South Barrier overflow has begun. Behind the static I heard alarms screaming inside the control center. Metal warnings. Fast overlapping beeps. My stomach sank hard. Water rushed beneath the bridge supports beside us. Dark and violent under the storm. Reeves rubbed rainwater from his forehead. There has to be another operator. Not certified for manual override. Then walk me through it. I looked at him carefully. He meant it. The arrogance was draining out of him minute by minute. Under the emergency lights he looked exhausted now. Human. You cannot do it alone, I said. The will chamber floods during pressure release. Another lightning flash split the sky overhead. For 1 second the entire lock station appeared in the distance through sheets of rain. Massive steel gates. Concrete towers. Water crashing white against the spillway walls. Then darkness swallowed it again. The county worker lowered the injunction papers slowly. If we follow this order, people lose homes tonight. Reeves stared toward the black SUV again. And if we ignore it? Keller sues the county by morning. Reeves laughed once under his breath. Bitter sound. Empty sound. Homes or lawsuits? He shook his head slowly. That is the choice. Water splashed nearby. One of the flood workers pointed toward the canal edge. Overflow streams had reached the service road completely now. Muddy water curled around our boots in fast swirling currents. The bridge would not stay passable much longer. My phone buzzed again. Director Harris, this time on video call. I answered immediately. His face appeared shaky and grainy beneath emergency backup lights inside the control center. People moved frantically. Behind him. Naomi, he said sharply, we just lost East Harbor pumps. Reeves leaned closer to the screen. How long before failure? Harris looked toward another monitor off camera. 20 minutes if pressure keeps climbing. 20 minutes. The words landed heavily inside the SUV. The kind of number everybody feels immediately. Harris noticed Reeves then. His eyes narrowed. Why is she not inside the lock station already? Reeves looked down briefly. Shame crossed his face too fast for most people to notice. But I saw it. Harris saw it too. Nobody said anything about it. There was no time left for embarrassment. Only consequences. The black SUV engine suddenly revved louder near the bridge entrance. The driver door opened halfway. A man stepped out wearing a dark raincoat and holding another folder under his arm. Expensive shoes. Dry somehow despite the storm. He approached slowly through the water. Officer Reeves, he called over the rain, I strongly advise compliance with the injunction. Reeves stared at him coldly. Who are you? Attorney Michael Tolland. Legal counsel for Bay Ridge HOA. He handed Reeves another packet of papers sealed inside plastic. If Miss Carter accesses county infrastructure tonight, the county assumes full liability for all resulting damages. Tolland smiled slightly after saying it. Calm. Controlled. Like this was paperwork instead of panic. Behind us, another warning siren erupted from the canal towers. Louder than before. Deeper. Final. Then the bridge lights suddenly went dark. Darkness swallowed the bridge in an instant. Only the emergency strobes remained. Blue light flashed across the floodwater in broken waves. The canal roared beside us louder now. Closer. Angry. Attorney Tolland stopped walking when the bridge lights failed. For the first time since arriving, his calm expression cracked slightly. Water surged over the edge of the service road and wrapped around his expensive shoes. He looked down immediately. Human instinct always wins eventually. Reeves folded the injunction papers once and shoved them into his jacket pocket. Rain dripped from his chin as he stared toward the lock station ahead. How much time, he asked me quietly. I checked the pressure monitor clipped to my utility belt. The screen flickered twice before stabilizing. Numbers flashed red across the display. Less than 15 minutes. One of the county workers cursed under his breath. The floodwater around our boots had already climbed past ankle level. Fast moving now. The bridge trembled lightly beneath us every few seconds. Tolland straightened again and forced authority back into his voice. Officer Reeves, if you allow unauthorized access after receiving a legal injunction, you become personally liable. Reeves looked at him slowly. Something colder had settled into his face now. Not anger. Clarity. And if I stop her? Tolland hesitated. Tiny pause. Then county procedure remains intact. Reeves glanced toward the black water hammering the canal walls. That is not what I asked. Thunder rolled overhead again. Long and low. The kind that shakes through your ribs. My radio burst with overlapping voices. South Basin overflow confirmed. Residential flooding beginning near Harbor Lane. We need those gates open now. Tolland shifted uncomfortably as the emergency calls echoed through the static. He looked toward the black SUV blocking the bridge entrance. Then back at Reeves. The county has insurance coverage for storm damage. One of the flood workers stepped toward him in disbelief. People are trapped in those homes. Tolland opened his mouth again, but another sound cut through the storm first. Children. Faint. Distant. Somewhere downhill beyond the canal. Reeves heard it too. His eyes lifted toward the flooded subdivision lights flickering through the rain. Tiny yellow windows in the dark. Real families. Real people. Not paperwork. Not liability forms. His jaw flexed once. Then he turned toward me. Tell me exactly what you need. Tolland stepped forward sharply. Officer, do not make a mistake here. Reeves snapped around so fast even the county workers froze. The mistake already happened, he said. Silence hit hard after that. Rain pounded against the bridge rails. Water rushed beneath our feet in violent swirling currents. Tolland looked suddenly smaller standing there in his soaked coat. Reeves pointed toward the black SUV blocking the road. Move the vehicle. Tolland did not move. Reeves took one slow step closer. Now. The driver inside the SUV finally reversed the vehicle away from the bridge entrance. Tires splashed through floodwater as the road cleared. My radio screamed again. Naomi, block pressure reaching structural limit. I grabbed Reeves's arm before he turned away. The chamber will take 2 people during flood release. He nodded immediately. No hesitation this time. Then I am coming with you. Tolland stared at him in disbelief. You could lose your badge for this. Reeves looked back once. Rain streamed down both sides of his face beneath the flashing blue lights. Better than losing a neighborhood. That line stayed hanging in the storm for one heavy second. Then another deep metallic boom rolled through the canal. Closer than before. The county worker pointed toward the far spillway wall. Concrete dust burst into the rain near the base of the structure. Small crack. But visible even from here. My stomach dropped instantly. Reeves saw it too. Go, he said. We ran through the floodwater toward the lock station while the canal began tearing itself apart. The floodwater hit my knees before we reached the lock station stairs. Cold water slammed against my legs hard enough to throw off my balance. Reeves grabbed the rail beside me and pulled himself forward through the current. The storm had turned the entire canal platform into a shaking sheet of black water and flashing emergency lights. Sirens screamed from somewhere uphill. Metal groaned beneath the pressure building inside the gates. The concrete walls vibrated under our feet. This way, I shouted over the storm. Reeves stayed close behind me as we forced our way toward the lower wool chamber. Rain hammered the steel staircase so loudly it sounded like gravel pouring from the sky. The flood workers followed with emergency lamps and tool kits bouncing against their backs. One of them slipped briefly on the stairs. Water exploded against the railing below him. Nobody stopped moving. We reached the chamber door at the bottom platform. Thick steel. Rust streaks. Manual lock. Wheel beside the frame. I grabbed the release handle and pulled hard. Nothing. Reeves stepped beside me immediately. Stuck. Pressure seal. Water sprayed through the cracks around the frame. Tiny streams at first. Then stronger. Reeves planted both hands against the wheel. On 3. We turned together. Metal shrieked deep inside the mechanism. The wheel resisted hard. My shoulders burned instantly from the force. Reeves grunted beside me as the wheel moved another inch. Then another. Finally the chamber seal released with a violent burst of air and water. The heavy door swung inward halfway before slamming against the concrete wall. A wave of hot mechanical air rushed out smelling like oil, rust, and overheated motors. Emergency red lights flashed inside the chamber. "Go," I said. We pushed into the tunnel. Water dripped constantly from the ceiling pipes overhead. Thick steel valves lined both walls. The entire chamber shook every few seconds from the pressure outside. Reeves stared upward briefly as another deep boom rolled through the structure. "That does not sound good." "Because it is not." We reached the override-wall platform at the center of the chamber. Huge iron spokes. Taller than both of us standing together. The emergency flood release wheel had not been turned manually in almost 8 years. Rust covered the outer bolts in thick brown lines. One of the flood workers cursed softly behind us. "This thing is frozen solid." My radio crackled again. Director Harris sounded exhausted now. "Naomi, lower wall fracture expanding." Reeves looked toward me sharply. "How long?" Harris answered immediately. "Maybe 10 minutes before structural breach." Reeves removed his soaked jacket and stepped toward the wheel without another word. He wrapped both hands around one of the iron spokes. Water dripped from his sleeves onto the platform floor. "Tell me what to do." The emergency lights flashed across his face in harsh red pulses. He no longer looked like the man who had cuffed me beside the road. That version of him felt far away now. Buried under rainwater, panic, and consequences. "Counterclockwise," I said. "Full release takes 6 rotations." Reeves nodded once. "Then let us move." We pushed together. The wheel barely shifted at first. Metal groaned deep inside the gate system. My boots slid slightly against the soaked concrete. Reeves adjusted his footing and shoved harder. Muscles tightened along his jaw and neck beneath the red emergency lights. Another loud crack thundered through the structure overhead. Dust drifted from the ceiling pipes. One of the flood workers looked upward nervously. "The wall is giving way." Reeves pushed harder. "Again," he said through his teeth. The wheel moved another few inches. Then suddenly a violent vibration ripped through the entire chamber. The lights flickered black for half a second. Water burst from a side pipe and slammed across the floor in a freezing spray. One flood worker stumbled backward into the railing. My radio screamed with overlapping voices all at once. "Barrier failure near Harbor Lane. Residential evacuation underway. Water entering the elementary access road." Reeves froze briefly when he heard the word elementary. I saw it hit him immediately. His younger brother had gone to that school years ago before the overdose. He had mentioned it earlier in the patrol SUV without realizing it. Just one quiet sentence about growing up near these canals. Shame crossed his face again. Heavy this time. I grabbed another spoke on the wheel and looked directly at him. "You cannot undo tonight," I said quietly. "But you can still stop what comes next." Reeves stared at me for one hard second. Then he pushed the wheel again with everything he had. The wheel finally lurched forward another quarter turn with a sound like tearing metal. A deep vibration rolled through the chamber floor beneath our boots. Then somewhere above us, massive locks inside the gate system began moving for the first time all night. Slow. Heavy. Violent. Water thundered against the outer walls hard enough to shake dust from the ceiling pipes. Reeves stumbled back half a step, breathing hard. Sweat mixed with rainwater across his forehead under the emergency lights. Did it work? Before I could answer, the chamber speakers crackled alive overhead. Pressure drop confirmed at South Lock. 3. One of the flood workers let out a shaky breath. Thank God. But the relief lasted only a second. Then another alarm erupted across the chamber. Higher pitched this time. More urgent. My monitor flashed bright red in my hand. What now? Reeves asked immediately. I stared at the numbers climbing across the screen. The north diversion gates are not responding. Reeves blinked once. Another system failure? No, I looked toward the dark tunnel leading deeper into the lock station. Someone shut them down manually. Silence hit hard after that. Even the flood workers stopped moving. The canal roared outside the walls like an animal trapped beneath the concrete. One worker adjusted his headset quickly. Control center confirms it, he said. North gates are offline by command override. Reeves turned toward me slowly. Can Keller do that remotely? No, I grabbed my radio again. The override terminal is inside the upper operations room. Another vibration ripped through the structure. Water sprayed harder from the damaged pipe overhead. The chamber floor was flooding now. Cold water curled around our boots in fast swirling patterns beneath the red emergency lights. Reeves wiped water from his face. Then somebody is already inside the station. The truth settled heavily between us. This was never just about delaying repairs. Somebody wanted the flood barriers to fail completely. My radio hissed with static before Director Harris spoke again. Naomi, we just got security backup footage uploaded from the lower bridge cameras. Tell me. Harris paused briefly. The black SUV that blocked your access road belongs to Bay Ridge Legal Services. Reeves looked toward me sharply. Tolland. And there is more, Harris said. Footage from earlier tonight shows another vehicle entering the station before the cameras were cut. I already knew the answer before he said it. Who? Martin Keller. Reeves closed his eyes briefly. Just 1 second. Regret hit differently when facts finally removed all excuses. Another loud crack rolled through the upper walls of the chamber. Bigger this time. Concrete dust drifted down across the control wheel beside us. One flood. Worker looked upward nervously. We do not have time for another gate failure. Reeves opened his eyes again. Clear now. Focused. How do we reach the operations room? I pointed toward the upper maintenance tunnel beyond the chamber stairs. 2 levels up. Reeves grabbed a flashlight from the emergency kit and checked the beam. Strong white light cut through the red flashing darkness. Then we move. We climbed the maintenance stairs fast while the chamber continued flooding beneath us. Metal railings rattled violently from the pressure outside the walls. The air smelled thicker now. Hot wiring. Burned motors. River mud. Every few seconds another deep impact rolled through the structure overhead. Somewhere outside, more sirens echoed through the storm from the flooded neighborhoods downhill. Halfway up the second staircase, Reeves slowed briefly beside me. His voice dropped lower. Quieter than before. I should have checked your visor. I kept climbing. Yes. Rainwater dripped through ceiling cracks onto the narrow stairwell. Reeves stared down at the flashlight beam for 1 second before speaking again. I saw what I expected to see tonight. His words sounded rough now. Honest. And what did you expect? He did not answer immediately. The silence between us said enough already. Another emergency speaker crackled alive overhead. Structural breach expanding near Harbor Lane Elementary. Reeves froze on the stairs the moment he heard the school name again. Then from somewhere deeper inside the station, a steel door slammed shut. The steel door slammed again somewhere above us. Hard enough to echo through the entire stairwell. Reeves lifted the flashlight instantly toward the upper landing. White light cut across dripping pipes and rusted railings. Nothing moved. But somebody was definitely inside the station. The emergency alarms kept pulsing red across the narrow walls. Fast now. Relentless. Water dripped from the ceiling onto my shoulders as we climbed higher. The whole structure groaned around us like it was struggling to stay upright. How much longer before total breach? Reeves asked. I checked the pressure monitor again. The numbers jumped higher every few seconds. Maybe 8 minutes. Reeves breathed out slowly through his nose. Not panic. Focus. The kind people find only after they finally stop lying to themselves. We reached the operations corridor on the 3rd level. The hallway lights flickered weakly overhead. Half the ceiling panels had already collapsed from water leaks. Muddy footprints stretched across the concrete floor toward the control room at the far end. Fresh footprints. Reeves crouched briefly beside them. 2 people. He pointed at the deeper impressions in the water. One heavier than the other. Keller and Tolland. Reeves stood again without answering. We moved carefully down the corridor while flood sirens screamed outside through the walls. Somewhere below us, another gate mechanism slammed open with a deep metallic boom. Water pressure shifted violently beneath the station floor. The building shook hard enough to rattle the hallway windows. I grabbed the rail instinctively. Reeves steadied himself against the wall beside me. This place is coming apart. The north gates are still sealed, I said. Pressure has nowhere else to go. We reached the control room door. Locked electronically. Red access light glowing beside the keypad. Reeves tested the handle once. Solid. Then he looked through the narrow safety window. His flashlight beam caught movement inside. Keller stood near the control terminal with both hands braced against the console. Tolland paced beside him holding a phone against his ear. Multiple monitor screens flashed flood maps across the room in red warning colors. Water levels. Evacuation zones. Emergency routes. Keller looked terrified now. Truly terrified. Not angry. Not arrogant. Just scared. Reeves knocked hard against the reinforced glass. Keller spun around immediately. His face drained of color the second he saw us. Tolland stepped forward sharply and shouted something through the door, but the alarm swallowed most of the words. Reeves pointed toward the emergency override panel beside the frame. Open the door. Keller shook his head violently. I could read his lips clearly. No, Reeves hit the glass harder this time. People are flooding downstream. Keller pointed toward the control screens behind him. Then finally shouted loud enough to hear through the steel. If we open the north gates now, Bay Ridge takes the full surge. The truth landed instantly. Reeves stared at the flood maps inside the room. Wealthier neighborhoods glowed blue. Lower income zones downhill flashed red. My stomach tightened cold. Keller had redirected the flood pressure away from Bay Ridge and toward the neighborhoods below. Toward Harbor Lane. Toward the elementary school evacuation routes. Reeves understood it too. His face hardened slowly beneath the flashlight glow. You sacrificed the lower district. Keller stepped backward from the glass. I protected this community. By drowning another one. Keller slammed his palm against the console. You do not understand what happens if Bay Ridge floods. Property losses. Lawsuits. Investors pull out. Reeves stared at him like he was looking at a stranger. Maybe he was. Tolland stepped toward the monitors quickly. Officer Reeves, listen carefully. If those upper properties collapse financially, the county loses millions in tax revenue. Reeves laughed once. Short. Disbelieving. That is your argument right now. Another violent tremor ripped through the station. Ceiling dust burst across the hallway lights. One monitor inside the room suddenly flashed bright red. Structural failure warning. Then another screen went black completely. Keller turned toward it in panic. I saw fear finally overtake calculation inside his eyes. Real fear. Human fear. The kind money cannot negotiate with. My radio exploded with static beside me. Then Director Harris shouted through the noise. "Naomi, Harbor Lane Elementary is taking water now." The words from Director Harris echoed through the hallway speakers like a punch to the chest. Harbor Lane Elementary was taking water. Reeves stepped back from the control room glass slowly. His flashlight beam shook across the flooded corridor floor. Inside the room, Keller looked frozen beside the flashing monitors. Tolland kept talking into his phone, but his voice sounded thinner now. Less confident. One control screen suddenly switched to a live traffic camera from Harbor Lane. Water rushed across the elementary access road in dark waves beneath blinking evacuation lights. A yellow school bus sat stranded near the curb with emergency responders surrounding it. Reeves stared at the screen without blinking. There are still people there. Keller dragged both hands across his wet hair. The surge was not supposed to reach that far. "You redirected the pressure manually," I said. "What did you think would happen?" Another violent tremor shook the hallway. Ceiling lights flickered hard. Somewhere deeper in the station, metal screamed against metal. The north diversion system was starting to fail under the pressure lock. Reeves stepped toward the electronic access panel beside the control room door. "Can you override it?" I moved beside him quickly. Rainwater dripped from both our jackets onto the flooded floor. The red keypad light blinked steadily. "Locked from inside." "Maybe," I said. "If the backup power has not burned out." Reeves held the flashlight steady while I removed the emergency panel cover beneath the keypad. Sparks flashed briefly behind the wiring. The smell of burned circuits filled the corridor immediately. Hot. Bitter. Dangerous. Inside the room, Keller moved closer to the glass. "Naomi," he shouted, "if those gates open fully, Bay Ridge floods first." I kept working on the wires. "And if they stay closed, Harbor Lane floods completely." Keller slammed his hand against the console behind him. "Do you know what lives in Bay Ridge?" Reeves looked at him coldly. "Human beings live in Harbor Lane too." Silence hit after that. Heavy silence. Even Tolland stopped talking on the phone for a moment. The emergency alarms continued pulsing red across the corridor walls. Fast enough now to feel like a heartbeat. My fingers worked through the soaked wiring carefully. The manual lock circuit is still active. Reeves crouched lower beside me. "Tell me what you need." Flashlight closer. He adjusted the beam instantly. No hesitation anymore. Just focus. Just trust. Another monitor inside the room flickered violently before going black. Then another. Keller turned toward the failing systems in panic. "The pressure walls are collapsing," he whispered. "Real fear now. Raw fear. The kind that strips away status and expensive suits and country club confidence." Water suddenly burst beneath the control room door in a rushing stream across the hallway floor. Tolland stumbled backward from it immediately. Reeves looked at the spreading floodwater and then at me. "How long?" "Minutes. Maybe less." Sparks snapped from the exposed wires beneath my hands. Then finally the keypad light changed from red to yellow. Reeves noticed first. "You got it?" I nodded once. "The lock will cycle after the pressure reset." Inside the room, Keller saw the keypad change colors. His face drained completely. "No," he whispered. "You cannot open those gates." Reeves stood slowly in front of the glass. Water swirled around his boots beneath the flashing emergency lights. "You planted evidence in my investigation," he said quietly. "You blocked emergency access. And now people are trapped because you wanted to protect property values." Keller shook his head weakly. "You do not understand what panic does to markets." Reeves stared at him for one long second. Then he answered softly. "And you do not understand what panic does to children." The electronic lock beside us clicked once inside the door. The control room door unlocked with a heavy metallic clunk. Reeves grabbed the handle immediately and forced the door open against the rushing water pressure behind it. Cold floodwater spilled across the hallway floor around our legs. Inside the room, alarms screamed from every monitor still functioning. Red warning lights flashed over soaked control panels and scattered paperwork. Keller backed away from the console the moment Reeves entered. Tolland raised both hands instinctively as if words could still fix this. They could not. Not anymore. Water dripped from the ceiling onto the electrical boards in steady streams. Sparks snapped from a damaged terminal near the far wall. The smell of smoke and river water mixed thick in the air. Reeves moved directly toward the north gate controls. Which one? I stepped beside him and pointed at the emergency diversion panel blinking red across the center screen. Manual release. Sequence. Reeves reached for the switch but Keller lunged toward the console first. Not violent. Desperate. Pure panic. You flood Bay Ridge if you touch that. Reeves caught his arm before he reached the controls. Bay Ridge survives, Reeves said sharply. Harbor Lane survives too. Keller looked toward the flood maps shaking across the monitors. His voice cracked for the first time all night. People will lose millions. I stared at the evacuation cameras on the upper screen. Families moved through waist-deep water under flashing rescue lights. Children wrapped in blankets. Elderly residents climbing into emergency rafts. Real fear. Real faces. They were already losing everything, I said quietly. Reeves released Keller slowly but kept himself between him and the controls. Tolland stepped forward carefully through the water spreading across the room. Officer Reeves, if you override county injunction orders, there will be investigations. Reeves looked at him tiredly. Not angry anymore. Just tired. There should be. Silence settled for one heavy second beneath the alarms. Then another deep impact shook the station hard enough to crack one of the overhead monitors. Glass shattered across the flooded floor. The diversion wall was failing. Reeves turned toward me immediately. Tell me the sequence. I moved beside the control panel and entered the override codes manually. The keyboard barely responded through the water damage. One screen flickered black twice before stabilizing. Gate release in stages, I said. Too fast and the pressure surge hits Bay Ridge all at once. Reeves nodded. Then we do it slow. We worked side by side through the flashing emergency lights while the station groaned around us. My fingers shook from cold and exhaustion across the controls. Reeves kept the flashlight steady whenever the overhead lights dimmed. No hesitation anymore. No suspicion. Just trust. Behind us, Keller slowly sank into one of the control chairs. His soaked clothes clung heavily to him now. He looked smaller somehow. Older too. Like the storm had finally stripped away the illusion that money could shield consequences forever. Tolland stood silent beside the flooded doorway staring at the evacuation footage on the monitors. Even he had stopped arguing. The final override warning appeared across the main screen. Pressure redistribution will flood upper district streets. Reeves read it carefully. Then looked at the Harbor Lane flood cameras beside it. Water climbing school walls. Rescue crews carrying children through the rain. He pressed the confirmation switch without another word. For half a second nothing happened. Then somewhere deep beneath the station, massive gate locks began turning all at once. The sound rolled through the walls like distant thunder. The floor trembled violently beneath our boots. Monitor readings shifted fast across every screen. Pressure levels dropped. Slowly at first. Then faster. Outside the station windows, the Black Canal water began changing direction. One flood worker shouted through the hallway radio. North diversion opening confirmed. Another voice followed immediately after. Harbor Lane water levels stabilizing. Reeves closed his eyes briefly when he heard that. Relief hit him hard enough to show. But before anybody could breathe fully again, one final alarm suddenly screamed across the control room in solid red. The final alarm cut through the control room sharp enough to stop everyone cold. Solid red lights flashed across the flooded consoles while a mechanical voice repeated the same words again and again. Structural breach imminent. Evacuate upper station immediately. Water burst harder beneath the control room door. The current rushed across the floor around our legs fast enough to pull loose papers into spinning circles. Reeves looked toward the monitor readings first. Pressure levels were dropping across Harbor Lane. Stabilizing. The diversion gates had worked. But the lock station itself was failing now. One of the flood workers shouted from the hallway. The support wall is cracking below the chamber. Reeves grabbed the emergency radio from the desk instantly. All personnel move out now. His voice carried differently now. Calm. Direct. Certain for the first time all night. Keller remained frozen in the control chair staring at the flood maps on the monitors. Bay. Ridge streets glowed blue with rising water warnings. Not destroyed. Just flooded. Temporary damage. The kind rich neighborhoods recover from quickly. Harbor Lane still flashed red in sections, but the levels had stopped climbing. Families would make it out now. Schools would stay standing. Children would get home. Keller looked at the screens like he was seeing numbers turn into people for the first time. I was trying to protect the community, he whispered weakly. Reeves stared at him for a long second. Only you're part of it. Another violent tremor shook the station. Ceiling panels collapsed near the far wall with a crash of metal and water. Tolland finally moved then. Fast. Fear had stripped the lawyer down to instinct. He splashed toward the exit without another argument. One flood worker followed him carrying emergency kits against his chest. Reeves stepped toward Keller and held out a hand. Move. Keller looked at the offered hand in silence. Rainwater dripped through the broken ceiling onto his expensive watch and soaked collar. Nothing about him looked powerful anymore. Finally he stood slowly. I shut down the remaining control sequences while Reeves helped Keller through the flooded doorway. Emergency backup lights flickered weakly across the corridor outside. The station sounded alive around us now. Groaning steel. Rushing water. Cracking concrete. Every noise carried pressure behind it. We moved carefully down the maintenance stairs together. Floodwater surged around our boots nearly to knee level again. The lower chamber was almost completely submerged now. Reeves kept one hand against the rail and the other gripping Keller's arm to steady him through the current. Nobody spoke much. There was nothing left to argue about anymore. Outside the station, the storm had finally begun weakening. Rain still fell hard, but the wind had eased. Rescue lights flashed across the canal roads below where emergency crews evacuated the last flooded blocks. Helicopter beams swept slowly over Harbor Lane through the mist. The black canal water no longer slammed violently against the walls. It moved lower now. Controlled. Breathing again. We reached the service bridge. Just as another deep crack echoed behind us from inside the station. Everybody turned instinctively. One upper corner of the lock structure collapsed inward in a spray of concrete and sparks. Then the emergency lights inside finally died for good. Silence followed. Real silence this time. The kind that feels heavy after hours of alarms. Reeves removed his soaked cap slowly and stared back at the dark station. Water dripped from his hair onto his shoulders. I almost arrested the person trying to save all of them, he said quietly. I looked toward the flooded neighborhoods glowing beneath rescue lights in the distance. But you did not stop there. Reeves lowered his eyes briefly. Shame still lived there. Probably always would. But something else lived beside it now too. Understanding. The storm clouds began breaking apart over the canal. Thin morning light touched the water in pale silver lines. Behind us, Harbor Lane rescue radios finally started reporting survivors.